Hello, welcome to Art for Beginners. My name is Taylor, and in this series I will be demonstrating some basic level techniques for the amateur digital artist. Today we will be drawing a hedgehog from the classic franchise Sonic the Hedgehog. These fantastic creatures with their magical abilities of speed have enticed audiences via video games, movies, television, and restaurants. After this tutorial, you'll be able to make a pet hedgehog of your very own. Again, we will be using Paint 3D, which will allow us to add depth to our character. Let us start with the head. Now, if we start with the reference image, we can see that the head is a fairly intimidating shape compared to some of our previous characters. However, with the tools that we have access to in Paint 3D, we can take a couple shortcuts and make a fairly simple representation of this head. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our 3D Shapes tab and select the Soft Edges 3D Doodle tool. What we're going to draw here is sort of a comma shape. We're going to be drawing his face and profile. So let's start at the top. We'll go down, poke out, and come back around like this. We now have our first shape, but it's not quite done yet because we want to flip it around real quick and add some depth to it. I think that should work. And we'll just put it here for now. Next, let's draw the body. The body should also be fairly simple. It's going to be sort of an egg shape. So we're going to use the sphere tool now. But we're not going to draw a sphere. We're going to draw sort of a ellipsoid shape. An oblong round thing. That's also fairly simple. We just start here, click and drag to the size we want, and there we go. As we can see in the reference image, the head is actually quite larger than the body, so let's make sure that our proportions reflect that. That'll work. All we have to do now is position the body under the head, like this. And then next we'll want to bring the head forward just to make sure we get that chin where we want it, and I think that works pretty well. The arms and legs are going to be fairly simple as well. As we look at the reference image, we see that they're essentially just tubes. So for all four of them, all four limbs, we're going to use the cylinder tool. It's just a simple matter of drag, and there. And we'll be making 4 of these. Don't forget the Control-C, Control-V to get a second one. Now the arms are going to be a little bit smaller, so we can shrink those real quick like this. While we're focused on the limbs, I think we should now work on the shoes real quick. If we look at the reference image, we see a couple of shapes going on here, so we'll break it down into 2 shapes to keep it simple. With the 3D Soft Edges Doodle tool selected, let's first start with the shoe itself. It's a fairly simple shape. Go out like this. Come back. There we go. Don't forget to add some depth to it. Of course, our hedgehog's going to have some fairly large shoes, so we can just expand it like so. Move it forward a bit. Control-Z, Control-V to grab a second one. Now our character has some pretty large shoes, and you know what they say about people with large shoes? They also need large socks. So let's give them some socks real quick. For this, we're going to use the 3D Objects Tube tool, and we're just going to draw a tube. Of course, we're going to need 2 of them. Well done. Now hands are a fairly advanced technique, and since this is art for beginners, we're going to keep it simple. We're going to just make them into spheres, so they look sort of like closed fists. If you want to draw it with the fingers, you can try it for yourself. We'll be launching a tutorial for hands at a later time. Now, the last thing we're going to do with the body before we add some of the finer details is add ears. Now if we look at the reference image, we see that our hedgehog has cat ears for some reason. we'll work with that. With the Soft Edge 3D Doodle tool selected, we'll draw these sort of nacho shapes. These round nacho shapes. Move it into place, make it bigger if necessary. Control Z, Control V. Now we have two of them. Easy peasy. Now that we have the basic form down, we can start to customize our character a bit. Now, the original franchise has a variety of hedgehog characters, including ones with multiple tails, ones with spiked knuckles, and even girls. In addition, fans of the franchise often like to make their own hedgehog characters with their own unique appearances and abilities. For this tutorial, I'm going to stick with the original blue hedgehog character, but you can deviate a little bit if you want. First, we're going to add some of the quills to our hedgehog, as hedgehogs are known to have quills. Now, if we look at the reference image, we see that our hedgehog character has fairly thick, uncharacteristically large quills on its head. So drawing them should be actually fairly simple because of that. With the Soft Edge 3D Doodle tool selected, let's start here. We'll curve down, curve back up, and meet back at the start. Like always, we'll want to flip it around to give it some depth. We can flip it back. Now, getting the quill in the proper place may look like a challenge from this perspective, but fortunately, Paint 3D has you covered. If we click here at the 3D View tab, we're now looking at it in an isometric perspective, but we can also change that. If you hold down the right mouse button, we can orbit around our character like this. Now it should be a little bit easier to move it in place. We'll start with this one at the top. Now if you want to bring the whole character forward so as to not interfere with the background canvas, we'll just highlight the entire character and use the Z position slider to move it forward. There we go. So for this character, I think I'm going to make 5 quills. We'll copy and paste, paste again, and again. Next, you'll want to find a home for all these spikes. This might take some time. Don't forget to take advantage of the multiple angles afforded to us by the 3D View tool. Looking good. Now if we look at the reference image, we see that our hedgehog character actually has a pair of dorsal fins. This, coupled with the fact that it's blue, indicates to the audience that this hedgehog is an aquatic version. The process for adding these fins should be fairly similar to the quills. So again, with the Soft Edge 3D tool selected, we're going to draw a similar shape as before, maybe a little bit sharper, a little bit further pointed down. And this time we're not going to add depth like we have before, but we are going to copy and paste and make so we can have 2 of them. With both of them selected, we'll move them in place, check to make sure they're in the correct position. I think that looks great. Now the last shape that I'm going to draw is the tail. The tail is, again, fairly simple. It's going to be very much like the dorsal fin part. It's just small little points that will go on the backside of our character. Now we have all our basic shapes completed. Now if you want to return to our original head-on viewpoint, you just click on the 3D view box again and we're back to where we started. And this will help us when we start to add color to our character. Fortunately, the default color for Paint 3D is blue, which is what we wanted for our hedgehog character, so we can skip on to the finer details. So for the face and the belly and the arms, we're going to be using this cream color. Let's go to the brushes tab first and select the marker tool. And first we're going to start with the face. So to make the muzzle, we're just going to draw around the contours of the nose that we see in our 3D head shape. Go all the way down. Don't quite have to make it to the body. We'll fill that in later. And back to where we started. Next, we'll take the fill tool, this paint bucket, and just click on the nose, and there we go. If you want, you can go back to the marker tool and fill in some of the gaps to just make it even. Now the belly is going to follow a similar procedure. We're going to just trace the outline like this, go back up, and make sure you draw it all the way back to the starting point. It'll make the fill tool work properly. Then for the arms, you can just use the fill tool like normal. Finally, let's do the same thing with the ears. Next, we're going to color in the shoes. If we look at the reference image, we see that our hedgehog is going to be wearing red sneakers. So I'm just going to click on the red color and then fill them in. Next, select the white color, the marker, and make the marker a little bit thicker. I'm going to set it to 20 pixels. First, you're going to want to trace the sole of the sneaker. Next, you're going to add his signature white stripe across the top. Then we'll switch to the fill tool again and quickly color in the socks. While we still have the fill tool selected, we can color in the hands while we're at it. And then we'll switch over to the marker to draw the eyes. Now we look at the reference image, we see that this mythical creature actually only has one eye, but two pupils. So to draw the outline of the eye, we're going to go back to our marker tool. We're going to switch the thickness to 5 pixels again. We're going to start here. We're going to draw sort of a wacky M shape, I guess. Comes in, comes back out, and around. You're going to make sure you connect it to the front, because again, we want to make sure the fill tool works properly. We want it contains to this region exclusively. So again, we'll select the fill tool, click once, there we go. Next, let's draw the irises. For this, we're going to go back to our 2D Shapes tab and have the circle selected. Even though, again, we're not going to actually draw circles, we're going to draw ovals. And again, all that you have to do to draw the oval is to just click and drag like so. For the fill, let's go with the solid and use a green color. For the line type, we don't need any. When you have it where you want, just click the check mark. Select the circle tool again to just quickly draw the other one, and we're good. Now if we look at the reference image, we see that our character has narrow pupils that are elongated in the vertical direction. This indicates the carnivorous nature of our hedgehog, as this trait is commonly found in predators, as it gives them an advantage when it comes to perceiving prey at a distance, whether that's horses or mice or garter snakes. So we'll select our 2D shape tool once again. We'll draw a slightly narrower oval than before. And then for the fill type, we'll select black. If we go back to the reference image, we see our character has these little white circles in his eyes. These are indicative of the start of some cataracts, as this character is actually fairly old. So for that, all we have to do is just draw a couple small circles like this, and we'll make the fill type white. Now to finish off the face, we're going to need a mouth and a nose so we can speak and breathe. So for the mouth, let's go back to the brushes tool, use the marker. We'll select perhaps this brown color to contrast with the cream color of his muzzle. And it's a very simple smirk, like so. And for the nose, I think I'm actually going to go back to our 3D Shapes tool and draw a small sphere, like this. We should make it black. And use the Z position slider to ensure that the nose is on the tip of the muzzle. And there you have it, your very own pet hedgehog. Now if you want to draw a scene like this, I refer you to my first episode in this series where I go into a bit more detail on how to draw a background like this. One change I did make to my previous work is I included these green hills to reflect the natural habitat of our hedgehog character, which is aptly named the Green Hills. I'd like to thank you for watching this tutorial. Again, my name is Taylor, and I will see you next time on Art for Beginners.